The morning of August 24th, 79 AD, dawns bright and clear over the Bay of Naples, with Mount Vesuvius standing silent and majestic against the azure sky. You wake in your family's villa on the outskirts of Pompeii, the wealthy Roman city that has been your home for all of your 19 years. The gentle Mediterranean breeze carries the familiar scents of olive groves, grapevines, and the distant salt tang of the sea, mixing with the aromatic herbs that grow wild on the mountain's fertile slopes. Your name is Marcus Flavius, son of a prosperous wine merchant whose vineyards stretch across the rich volcanic soil that makes this region famous throughout the empire for its exceptional vintages. The very mountain that looms peacefully above your city has blessed the land with minerals that create wines coveted by patricians in Rome itself. This morning, like every morning for as long as you can remember, Vesuvius appears as nothing more than a sleeping giant, its peak often crowned with wisps of what you assume to be morning clouds. You rise from your comfortable bed, crafted from fine cedar wood and adorned with silk cushions imported from the distant lands of the East. The marble floors of your chamber are pleasantly cool beneath your feet, a welcome relief that you know will become more appreciated as the day grows warmer. Through the open windows, you can hear the familiar sounds of Pompeii awakening, the clip-clop of hooves on stone streets, the calls of merchants setting up their stalls in the forum, the distant splash of fountains that bring fresh mountain water to every neighborhood in the city. Your slave, Lucius, enters quietly with the customary morning refreshments, fresh bread still warm from the villa's ovens, honey collected from hives on the mountain slopes, and wine mixed with water in the proper proportions for the morning meal. Lucius has served your family since before your birth, a Greek scholar captured during one of the empire's eastern campaigns and purchased by your father as much for his learning as for his domestic skills. Over the years, he has become more teacher than servant, sharing his knowledge of literature, philosophy, and the natural world during the long afternoons when business keeps your father away from home. The omens seem favorable today, young master, Lucius observes as he arranges the breakfast items on the low table beside your bed. The birds sing with unusual enthusiasm, and the morning light has that particular clarity that often precedes important events. His words carry the subtle humor that characterizes your relationship. He knows you place little credence in auguries and signs, preferring the rational approach to understanding the world that he has taught you through your study of Greek philosophy. You dress in the simple white tunic appropriate for a young man of your station, adding the narrow purple stripe that indicates your family's membership in the equestrian class. Today's activities will take you into the city proper, where you plan to meet with potential buyers for the new vintage that has been aging in your family's warehouses. The wine trade requires constant attention to relationships and reputation, and your father has been gradually increasing your responsibilities in preparation for the day when the business will pass to you entirely. As you step outside the villa, you pause for a moment to admire the view that has greeted you every morning of your life, but never fails to inspire a sense of contentment. The city of Pompeii spreads out below you, its red-tiled roofs and white walls creating a harmonious pattern that speaks of prosperity and civilized comfort. Beyond the city walls, the bay stretches toward the horizon, dotted with the white sails of merchant vessels carrying goods to and from every corner of the known world. The entire scene embodies the peace and prosperity of the Pax Romana, the great calm that has settled over the Mediterranean world under Roman rule. The walk into the city takes you along familiar paths, through olive groves and vineyards, past the elaborate tombs that line the road outside the city walls in accordance with Roman custom. You know many of these monuments by heart, the final resting places of prominent citizens, decorated with inscriptions that boast of civic accomplishments and family virtues. The road itself is a marvel of Roman engineering, its perfectly fitted stones providing a smooth surface that allows loaded carts to travel efficiently between the city and the surrounding countryside. Entering Pompeii through the Herculaneum Gate, you are immediately immersed in the vibrant energy of a thriving commercial center. The streets bustle with activity as vendors set up their stalls, slaves hurry on various errands for their masters, and citizens begin their daily round of business and social obligations. The city's infrastructure amazes visitors from less sophisticated parts of the empire. Paved streets with raised sidewalks, public fountains fed by aqueducts that bring fresh water from mountain springs, elaborate bathhouses that serve as centers of social life, and a drainage system that keeps the streets clean and sanitary. Your first stop is the Forum, the heart of civic and commercial life, where the most important business of the day is conducted. The large rectangular space is surrounded by temples, basilicas, and public buildings that demonstrate the wealth and sophistication of Pompeian society. Merchants from across the Mediterranean display their wares in the covered market halls, while politicians and lawyers conduct their business in the basilica. The entire scene pulses with the energy of a prosperous city at the height of its development. As you cross the Forum, you notice unusual activity around the Temple of Jupiter, the king of the gods and protector of the Roman state. A crowd has gathered to observe some sort of ceremony, and you pause to investigate what has drawn their attention. The priest, dressed in his ceremonial robes, appears to be conducting an unscheduled sacrifice, his face bearing an expression of concern that seems unusual for such occasions. "The mountain spoke in the night," explains Gaius Caecilius, a fellow wine merchant whom you recognize from previous business dealings. Rumblings and tremors that woke half the city. The priests are offering sacrifices to appease whatever spirits may have been disturbed. His tone carries the casual dismissal typical of educated Romans when discussing what they consider primitive superstitions. But you notice a slight tension in his manner that suggests the nighttime disturbances were more significant than his words indicate. You recall now that your own sleep was troubled by strange sounds and sensations, dreams filled with underground thunder, and a restlessness that left you feeling less rested than usual. At the time, you attributed these disturbances to too much wine at dinner, or perhaps the unusually warm weather that has characterized recent weeks. But if others experienced similar phenomena, perhaps there was some external cause that affected the entire city. The morning's business proceeds normally despite the unusual beginning. You meet with several potential customers, sample new vintages in the wine shops, and conduct the negotiations that form the backbone of your family's commercial success. The quality of this year's harvest promises to exceed even the high standards that have made your family's wines famous throughout Campania, and the favorable prices you negotiate will contribute significantly to the family's already substantial wealth. By midday, the heat has become intense enough to drive most of the population indoors for the traditional period of rest that allows everyone to escape the worst of the Mediterranean sun. You retreat to a tavern popular with young men of your social class, where the cool interior and chilled wine provide relief from the oppressive temperature outside. The conversation among your companions centers on the usual topics: politics, sports, business opportunities, and the romantic entanglements that occupy much of their attention. But gradually, you become aware that the normal sounds of the city have taken on an unusual quality. The distant rumble that you initially attributed to cart traffic or construction work seems too constant and too deep to have such mundane origins. Moreover, the birds that usually fill the afternoon with their songs have fallen silent, creating an eerie quiet that makes other sounds seem artificially loud and distinct. "Listen," says your friend Quintus, raising his hand to quiet the conversation. "Do you hear that?" The rumbling has grown more pronounced, a low-frequency vibration that seems to come from beneath the city itself, rather than from any surface activity. The walls of the tavern appear to be trembling slightly, causing the hanging oil lamps to sway gently, despite the absence of any breeze. The owner of the establishment, a freedman named Marcus, who has lived in Pompeii his entire life, wears an expression of puzzled concern. "In 40 years, I have never felt the earth behave quite like this," he admits, his weathered hands steadying a clay amphora that threatens to topple from its shelf. There have been tremors before. This region has always known such things, but this feels different somehow, more persistent and more powerful. As if summoned by his words, a more violent tremor shakes the building, causing several patrons to reach for the walls to steady themselves. Dust falls from the ceiling, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the crash of pottery breaking and the startled cries of people caught off guard by the sudden motion. The cheerful atmosphere of the tavern evaporates as everyone realizes that something extraordinary is happening. You step outside to investigate and immediately notice changes in the city's atmosphere that send a chill down your spine despite the afternoon heat. The light has taken on a strange quality, as if filtered through invisible clouds, and the air itself seems heavier than normal. Most disturbing of all, when you look toward Mount Vesuvius, you see that the mountain's familiar silhouette has changed dramatically. What had been the peaceful, vine-covered slopes of a dormant volcano now displays a massive column of dark material rising straight up into the sky, like a giant tree trunk made of smoke and ash. The column climbs higher than seems possible, eventually spreading out at its top to form a shape that reminds you eerily of the stone pines that dot the Roman countryside. But this tree is made of darkness, and it continues to grow even as you watch, casting an ominous shadow across the bay and the surrounding lands. The realization of what you are witnessing hits you with the force of a physical blow. The mountain that has provided the fertile soil for your family's vineyards, that has stood as a benevolent guardian over Pompeii for generations beyond memory, has awakened from its ancient slumber. The rumblings, the tremors, the strange quality of the light, all of these are signs that Vesuvius has begun to release the incredible forces that have been building beneath its peaceful exterior. Panic spreads through the streets as other citizens recognize the danger facing their city. People emerge from shops and houses, pointing at the growing column and speaking in the rapid, urgent tones of those confronting an unprecedented crisis. Some call for immediate evacuation, while others argue that the mountain is too far away to pose serious danger to the city. The debate becomes academic as the first pieces of ash begin to fall like grey snow, coating everything with a fine layer of volcanic debris. You rush through the increasingly chaotic streets toward your family's villa, driven by the need to ensure your parents' safety and to gather whatever possessions might be saved from the catastrophe that now seems inevitable. The ash fall is intensifying with each passing moment, reducing visibility and making breathing difficult for those caught in the open. The cheerful, prosperous city you left this morning is transforming into a landscape of fear and confusion as its citizens confront a disaster beyond their experience or preparation. The roads leading out of the city are already crowded with refugees, families loading carts with their most valuable possessions, slaves carrying bundles of household goods, merchants attempting to salvage stock from their shops. The organized tranquility of Roman urban life is dissolving into the chaos of mass evacuation, as thousands of people simultaneously realize that their comfortable, secure existence has been shattered by forces beyond human control or understanding. As you near your family's villa, the ashfall has become so heavy that it resembles a blizzard of grey snow, accumulating on rooftops and in the streets with alarming speed. Each breath brings particles into your lungs, creating a choking sensation that forces you to cover your nose and mouth with the folds of your tunic. The familiar landmarks of your neighborhood are becoming obscured by the volcanic debris, transforming the landscape into an alien environment that bears little resemblance to the peaceful countryside you have known all your life. Your parents are waiting for you at the villa, their faces showing the strain of trying to decide what can be saved from a lifetime of accumulated possessions. Your father, normally a man of decisive action in business matters, appears overwhelmed by the magnitude of the choices facing the family. Should they attempt to load a cart with their most valuable items, risking delay that might prove fatal? Should they flee immediately, with only what they can carry, abandoning everything they have worked to build? The questions have no clear answers, and time for deliberation is rapidly running out. "The roads are becoming impassable," your father reports, his voice hoarse from the ash-filled air. "Every family in the region is trying to escape at the same time, creating massive delays. Some are saying we should wait until the worst passes, that the mountain will calm itself as quickly as it awakened." His words reflect the desperate hope of someone unwilling to accept that their world has changed forever. But his eyes reveal the fear that such hope may be misplaced. "The decision is made for you as another violent tremor shakes the villa, causing cracks to appear in the walls and bringing down part of the roof in the garden courtyard. The building that has sheltered your family for generations is becoming unsafe, damaged by the very forces that created the fertile land on which it stands. Whatever you choose to do, you cannot remain here much longer." As you help your parents gather essential items, documents proving property ownership, jewelry that represents portable wealth, warm clothing for what promises to be a difficult journey, the sound from the mountain grows louder and more menacing. The column of ash and debris climbing into the sky has reached proportions that dwarf everything in the surrounding landscape, a monument to destructive power that makes human achievements seem insignificant by comparison. The air itself has become toxic, filled with particles that burn the throat and eyes while making each breath a conscious effort. The temperature, despite the sun being blocked by volcanic debris, remains oppressively hot, suggesting that the material falling from the sky carries heat from the mountain's fiery interior. Every surface in the villa is now coated with ash that continues to accumulate at an alarming rate, threatening to make movement impossible if the eruption continues much longer. Your family's slaves present another agonizing decision. Roman law gives you absolute authority over their fate, but moral obligation and practical considerations complicate the choice of what to do with people who have served your household faithfully for years. Some beg to be allowed to flee to their home regions, while others prefer to remain with the family they have served since childhood. The crisis strips away the normal social structures that govern such relationships, reducing everyone to the same fundamental struggle for survival. Lucius, your childhood tutor and companion, refuses your offer of freedom and safe passage to anywhere he chooses to go. "My fate has been bound to this family since before your birth, young master," he says, with the dignity that has always characterized his manner. "If the gods have decreed that this mountain shall end our story, then we shall face that ending together, as we have faced everything else." His loyalty is both touching and heartbreaking, representing values that seem almost anachronistic in the face of the raw natural forces now reshaping the world around you. The villa's garden, where you spent countless hours as a child learning to read and write under Lucius's patient guidance, has been transformed into an alien landscape by the continuing ashfall. The fruit trees that provided shade and beauty are now grey skeletons, their branches heavy with volcanic debris. The fountains that once provided the musical sound of flowing water have been silenced, their basins filled with the same grey powder that coats everything else. The carefully tended flowers and herbs that your mother cultivated with such pride have disappeared beneath a blanket of destruction. As afternoon fades toward evening, the decision can no longer be postponed. The ash accumulation has reached dangerous levels, threatening to collapse the villa's roof and trap anyone remaining inside. The roads, while crowded and difficult, still offer the possibility of escape for those willing to abandon their possessions and trust to whatever protection the gods might provide during the journey to safety. You take a final look around the villa that has been your home for 19 years, trying to memorize details that you know you will never see again. The frescoed walls depicting scenes from mythology, the marble statues inherited from previous generations, the library containing scrolls collected from across the Greek world. All of these represent a culture and way of life that may be ending forever in the shadow of the awakening mountain. The journey away from your family villa becomes a nightmare of confusion and desperation as you join the stream of refugees fleeing the wrath of Vesuvius. The cart your father hastily loaded with essential possessions moves at an agonizingly slow pace, constantly delayed by fallen debris, panicked animals, and the sheer volume of people attempting to use roads never designed for such massive evacuation. The ash continues to fall with relentless intensity, accumulating so quickly that the cart's wheels sink deeper with each turn, making progress increasingly difficult. Your mother, usually the picture of Roman dignity and composure, clutches a small wooden box containing her most precious jewelry, while tears leave clean tracks down her ash-covered cheeks. The transformation from comfortable patrician matron to desperate refugee has happened so quickly that she seems unable to fully comprehend the magnitude of what your family has lost. Every few minutes, she turns to look back toward the villa, as if hoping to see that this is all some terrible dream from which she might still awaken. The road to Stabiae, normally a pleasant journey through countryside dotted with luxurious villas and productive farms, has become a hellscape of abandoned possessions and terrified people. Carts loaded with household goods have been abandoned when their owners realized that speed of movement was more important than preserving material wealth. Families argue about what to carry and what to leave behind, while children cry for toys and comfort items that must be sacrificed to survival. Lucius walks beside the cart, his scholarly demeanor unchanged despite the circumstances that have reduced everyone to the same level of desperate humanity. In all the Greek and Roman histories I have studied, he observes, his voice carrying clearly despite the chaos around you, I have never read of anything comparable to what we are witnessing. This mountain is writing a new chapter in the annals of natural catastrophe, one that will be remembered long after the names of emperors are forgotten. His words prove prophetic as the eruption intensifies beyond anything anyone could have imagined. The column of ash and debris rising from Vesuvius has grown so massive that it blocks out the sun, plunging the entire region into an unnatural twilight that disorients refugees already struggling with panic and exhaustion. Lightning flashes within the volcanic cloud, creating an otherworldly light show that illuminates the landscape in brief, stark moments that reveal the extent of the devastation spreading across Campania. The ash fall, which began as a light dusting reminiscent of snow, has now become a choking blizzard that makes breathing difficult and movement treacherous. You tear strips from your tunic to create makeshift masks for your family, but the fabric provides only limited protection against the fine particles that seem to penetrate every barrier. Your eyes burn constantly, tears mixing with volcanic dust to create a muddy paste that you must frequently wipe away to maintain any vision at all. Around you, the social order that has defined Roman life for centuries begins to break down under the pressure of shared catastrophe. Slaves abandon their masters to seek their own survival, while patricians beg for assistance from anyone willing to help. The carefully maintained distinctions between citizen and foreigner, free and slave, rich and poor, become meaningless when everyone faces the same immediate threat to their existence. A family from one of the neighboring villas recognizes you despite the ash that coats everyone in the same grey anonymity. Marcus calls Gaius Papidius, whose estate produces olive oil that competes with your family's wine in the markets of Rome. Have you heard anything about ships in the bay? Some say the Navy is sending vessels to evacuate people from the coastal towns. His voice carries a desperate hope that seems pathetic, given the obvious magnitude of the disaster. but you understand the need to grasp at any possibility of salvation. The mention of naval rescue reminds you of your uncle Pliny, who commands a fleet stationed at Messinum across the bay. As a boy, you spent many summers at his villa, learning about naval operations and the responsibilities of Roman military service. If anyone has the resources and authority to organize an evacuation, it would be someone in his position. The thought provides a focus for your escape efforts, reaching the coast and somehow making contact with whatever rescue operations might be underway. But progress toward the sea becomes increasingly difficult as the ash accumulation reaches depths that bog down carts and exhaust people attempting to walk through the ever-deepening drifts. Your father makes the agonizing decision to abandon the cart and continue on foot, selecting only the most essential items that can be carried by hand. The family documents and portable wealth go into packs that you and Lucius shoulder, while your parents carry water and food that may be crucial for survival during what promises to be a much longer journey than originally anticipated. The transformation of the landscape becomes more dramatic with each step away from Pompeii. The fertile farmland that has supported the region's prosperity for generations disappears beneath a blanket of volcanic debris that may render it uninhabitable for years to come. Vineyards that produced wine for the tables of emperors are reduced to grey skeletons, their carefully tended vines buried under ash that continues to fall with no sign of diminishing intensity. As your small group struggles through the deteriorating conditions, you encounter other refugees whose stories reveal the scope of the catastrophe spreading across the region. A baker from Herculaneum describes a wall of superheated gas and debris that swept down from the mountain, moving faster than any human could run and destroying everything in its path. His account suggests that some of the coastal towns may have been completely obliterated, making your hope of reaching safety by sea seem increasingly unrealistic. The temperature, which should be cooling as evening approaches, remains oppressively hot, despite the sun being completely blocked by the volcanic cloud. The ash falling from the sky carries heat from the mountain's interior, creating an environment that saps strength and makes every physical effort more difficult. Your clothing, designed for the mild Mediterranean climate, provides inadequate protection against the abrasive particles that seem to find their way into every fold and crevice. Lucius, despite his age and scholarly background, proves surprisingly resilient in the face of physical hardship. His knowledge of geography and astronomy, gained through years of study, helps navigate through the ash-darkened landscape when familiar landmarks become unrecognizable. The wind patterns suggest we should move northeast rather than directly toward the coast, he advises, his voice barely audible through the makeshift mask covering his mouth. The mountain's fury seems most concentrated toward the south and west. The accuracy of his observation becomes apparent as you encounter refugees fleeing from those directions, their accounts describing devastation that exceeds anything you have witnessed directly. Entire towns buried under ash, forests stripped bare by superheated winds, roads made impassable by fallen debris. The reports paint a picture of destruction on a scale that challenges comprehension. Your mother, whose strength has been flagging as the day progresses, stumbles and falls into the ash drift, her exhaustion finally overcoming her determination to keep moving. The sight of your normally dignified parent reduced to crawling through volcanic debris crystallizes the magnitude of how completely your world has changed. You and your father lift her between you, sharing the burden of helping her continue, while Lucius takes most of the weight of your remaining possessions. Night falls without bringing relief from the ashfall or any significant cooling of the oppressive temperature. If anything, the darkness makes the situation more terrifying, as the lightning flashing within the volcanic cloud provides the only illumination in a landscape transformed into something from the most frightening myths. The familiar constellations that have guided Roman navigation for centuries are completely obscured, leaving you dependent on Lucius's knowledge of terrain features to maintain any sense of direction. The sound from Vesuvius has evolved throughout the day, from distant rumbling to a constant roar that seems to shake the very foundations of the earth. Occasionally, the noise intensifies to levels that make conversation impossible, forcing your small group to huddle together and wait for the immediate fury to pass. During these intervals, the lightning within the volcanic cloud becomes so frequent and intense that it creates a strobing effect that turns the world into a series of still images frozen in stark black and white. Other refugee groups that you encounter share information about conditions in different directions, creating a gradually clearer picture of where safety might still be found. The consensus seems to be that the areas to the north and east of the mountain offer the best hope of escape, though even these regions are experiencing ashfall and seismic activity that make travel dangerous. The coastal areas, which initially seem to offer the possibility of escape by sea, are reported to be experiencing the most severe effects of the eruption. As the night progresses, your family's pace slows dramatically as exhaustion takes its toll on everyone's ability to continue. Your father, normally a man of considerable physical strength from years of overseeing vineyard operations, begins to show signs of the respiratory distress that affects everyone breathing the ash-laden air. Your mother has become almost completely dependent on assistance from you and Lucius, her strength sapped by hours of struggle through conditions unlike anything in her previous experience. The decision to seek shelter becomes unavoidable when your mother collapses completely, unable to take another step, despite her obvious understanding that stopping might mean death. A partially collapsed farmhouse provides minimal protection from the continuing ashfall, its damaged roof still offering some barrier against the debris raining from the sky. The building's original inhabitants have long since fled, leaving behind evidence of hasty evacuation in the form of scattered possessions and overturned furniture. Inside the damaged structure, the air is slightly clearer than outside, allowing everyone to remove the makeshift masks and breathe with less difficulty. The relief is enormous, but temporary. The ash continues to accumulate on the compromised roof, threatening to bring down the remaining structure if the eruption continues much longer. Every creak and groan of the building's timbers provides a reminder that this refuge could become a trap if the mountain's fury intensifies further. Lucius uses the brief respite to share his knowledge of similar volcanic events recorded by ancient historians, though his accounts provide little comfort. Thucydides writes of eruptions in distant lands that buried entire cities and changed the course of rivers, he explains, his voice hoarse from hours of breathing contaminated air. But those were events from the distant past, stories told by travelers from exotic places. No one in living memory has witnessed anything comparable to what is happening here. The long night passes slowly, punctuated by periods when the volcanic activity seems to intensify, and others when it appears to diminish slightly. During the quieter intervals, you can hear the sounds of other refugees passing by, voices calling out for lost family members, the creak of carts still struggling through the ash drifts, occasional arguments about which direction offers the best hope of escape. The human drama of survival plays out in fragments of conversation that drift through the damaged walls of your temporary shelter. Dawn, when it finally comes, brings no improvement in conditions and little hope of imminent relief. The ashfall continues with undiminished intensity, and the air remains thick with volcanic debris that reduces visibility to just a few yards. If anything, the daylight reveals more clearly the extent of the devastation surrounding your position, a landscape so thoroughly transformed that it bears no resemblance to the prosperous agricultural region you knew just 24 hours earlier. Your father, after consulting quietly with Lucius about the family's remaining options, makes the decision that you all understand, but no one wants to articulate clearly. The likelihood of reaching safety through overland travel has become negligible, and continuing to struggle through the worsening conditions will only exhaust the family's remaining strength. The farmhouse, damaged as it is, provides better protection than anything you are likely to find in the open landscape. The choice to remain in place rather than continue fleeing feels like a surrender, but it also brings a strange sense of peace after the desperate struggle of the previous day and night. Your family gathers in the most protected corner of the building, sharing the remaining food and water, while accepting that your fate now rests entirely in the hands of the gods. The social conventions that normally govern Roman family relationships fade away as parents and children, master and slave, simply become human beings facing the unknown together. Your mother, despite her physical exhaustion, demonstrates the strength of character that has always been her defining trait. She organizes the distribution of remaining supplies, ensures that everyone has adequate protection against the ash, and maintains the dignity that has characterized her approach to every challenge in her life. Her example provides stability that helps everyone cope with circumstances that would otherwise seem overwhelming. Lucius, true to his nature as a teacher, uses the enforced confinement to share stories from Greek and Roman literature, tales of heroes who faced impossible odds and found meaning in their struggles regardless of the ultimate outcome. His voice, cultured and calm despite the chaos surrounding you, provides a connection to the civilized world that seems to be disappearing beneath the mountain's fury. The familiar stories create a sense of continuity that helps maintain sanity in circumstances that challenge comprehension. As the second day of the eruption progresses, the sounds from outside begin to change. The roar from Vesuvius remains constant, but the human sounds of passing refugees become less frequent and eventually disappear entirely. Either most people have moved beyond the range of your hearing, or the conditions have become too severe for anyone to continue traveling. The silence is more ominous than the previous chaos, suggesting that you may be among the last people still alive in this transformed landscape. The ash accumulation on the damaged roof reaches dangerous levels, requiring periodic efforts to clear away debris that threatens to bring down the entire structure. Each time you venture outside to push ash off the roof, the intensity of the ongoing eruption becomes apparent, a relentless storm of volcanic material that shows no signs of diminishing. The temperature remains oppressively hot, and the air burns your lungs despite the protection of cloth masks. Your father, normally a man who faces challenges with confidence based on his experience in commercial negotiations, struggles to maintain composure in the face of forces completely beyond human influence. In business, he observes during a moment of relative quiet, there is always something you can do: negotiate better terms, find new markets, adjust to changing conditions. But this... His voice trails off as another violent tremor shakes the building, emphasizing the futility of trying to apply normal problem-solving approaches to geological catastrophe. Yet even in these extreme circumstances, the bonds that hold your family together prove stronger than the forces trying to tear everything apart. The shared danger eliminates petty grievances and daily irritations, revealing the deep affection and loyalty that forms the foundation of your relationships. Your parents' concern for your welfare exceeds their own fear, while your determination to protect them provides strength you did not know you possessed. As the hours pass and the situation shows no signs of improvement, conversations turn naturally to memories of better times, family celebrations, successful harvests, trips to Rome and other cities throughout the empire. These reminiscences serve both to distract from present dangers and to affirm the value of the life you have shared together. The stories create a sense of completion, as if by reviewing the past, you are somehow preparing for whatever future awaits. Lucius, whose freedom you offered during the initial panic, reaffirms his decision to remain with the family regardless of what happens. The bonds formed through shared experience, he explains with the philosophical perspective that has always characterized his approach to life, prove stronger than legal distinctions between slave and free. We have faced this catastrophe together, and whatever comes next, we shall meet it with the same unity. The third day brings subtle changes that suggest the eruption may finally be beginning to diminish. The ash fall, while still heavy, seems less intense than during the peak of the mountain's fury. The temperature drops slightly, and the constant roar from Vesuvius becomes intermittent rather than continuous. These small improvements offer hope that the worst may be passing, though the damage already done will require years to repair. Venturing outside reveals a landscape so thoroughly altered that it resembles nothing from your previous experience. The ash accumulation has reached depths that bury buildings up to their rooftops, creating a new ground level several feet higher than the original surface. The familiar landmarks that once defined this region have disappeared entirely, replaced by an alien terrain of grey dunes and scattered debris. Yet as the volcanic activity gradually subsides, signs of life begin to reappear. Birds that had fled during the worst of the eruption start to return, and in the distance you can hear voices of other survivors beginning to emerge from their shelters. The realization that you and your family have survived the worst natural disaster in Roman memory brings overwhelming relief, mixed with profound sadness for all that has been lost. The journey toward whatever new life awaits will be long and difficult. The world you knew has been buried beneath volcanic ash, taking with it not just material possessions, but an entire way of life. The prosperous vineyards, the comfortable villa, the social position your family enjoyed, all of these have been swept away by forces that reduced human achievements to insignificance. But you have survived, and with survival comes the possibility of rebuilding. The knowledge and skills that created the original prosperity remain intact, even if the physical foundation must be recreated elsewhere. More importantly, the family bonds that sustained you through the catastrophe provide the emotional foundation for whatever future you might construct from the ruins of the past. As you help your parents take their first steps into the transformed landscape, you carry with you the memory of a city that was. A way of life flourished and disappeared in the span of 3 days. Pompeii, buried beneath volcanic ash, will remain frozen in time as a testament to both the achievements and the vulnerability of human civilization. But you bear witness to its story, carrying forward the memory of what was lost and the hope of what might yet be built from the ashes.